Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and we have more product news coming out for you if you haven't heard yet, and that is from the house of Moza. Moza is going to shake the industry by storm, you guys, this year, as if they already haven't. Stick around to find out more as to why. If you are interested in any of my tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future guides that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. Okay, you guys, so last year Moza really started to kick some tail and turn some heads, if you catch my drift on what I really wanted to say there, with quite a few releases. They had their force feedback yoke, which is a fantastic success. It's a wonderful product. It's my favorite one that they've released so far, and it's my favorite of the force feedback category. They have their AB9, which not only is started out as a force feedback flight stick, but now is also duals up as a shifter. Then they also have, remember, the yoke handle actually comes off, and they also have their first officer's Airbus grip, and you also have the MH16 F16 A10 slash sort of combo flight stick. So they have even more coming this year, as you guys can see here. Oh, and they have the MTP throttle. So we're going to go into quite a few different pieces. By the way, we're also going to be talking about why we probably will not see an Airbus captain stick, and I will be surprised if you see it from anybody. You know, let's go ahead and touch on that first real quick, just because it comes up a lot. And guys, like I said, I will be really surprised if you ever see one from anyone. There may be a couple out there, but here's the problem with that. When you think about flight sticks, you have to think about the flight stick base, and you have to remember the overall purpose behind the base. Whether you're talking about Virpil, Moza, Windwing, Thrustmaster, doesn't matter. You have to think about the essential use of the base in flight simulation. You have flight simulation who's going to be buying a flight stick. What's the primary grab going to be? The primary grab is going to be any kind of, for example, helicopter, any kind of fighter aircraft, so your DCS World, etc., and the fact that that same flight stick can be used in any aircraft you want. For example, for the longest time, I still swear that if you are just getting into flight simulation, HOTAS is the best way to go, because it can do anything. You can do anything you want with a HOTAS. There's not a single plane that you can't fly with a HOTAS that would feel weird. You can fly something that belongs to a yoke. You can fly something that belongs to a stick. However, going the other direction, like for example, yoke on a helicopter, I've seen people do it, but I've also heard them say it's really weird at first. So the problem with the idea of creating an Airbus captain stick is that there is going to be a very, very small market for it. Okay, you're going to have to be one diehard Airbus enthusiast, and you have to think about, again, going back to the nature of the bases. It's the base that's going to cause there isn't enough grab. Most enthusiasts, you're going to have a dedicated cockpit, you know, whether it be something that's static in a just like a desk configuration, or whether or not it's something that's going to be like on a full-on rig like what's behind me, or like your Next Level Racing or SimFab, all those different ones where you have a very static configuration for your cockpit. People aren't going to really be wanting to move those bases back and forth, because no matter what you do with those bases, unless you're doing desktop mounting, they're really a pain in the ass to move. Like, especially think about something like the AB9. The AB9 is heavy, guys. That thing, I think, is over 10 pounds, if I remember correctly. It's a brick. But again, it's something, because force feedback, you have to mount it. It has to be static. So the big overall problem is that although there are plenty of us who would love to have a captain's left-hand stick for an Airbus, the overall market and what it would cost to market one, produce one, ship one, etc., keep them on stock, unfortunately when you do the math, it doesn't math from a business standpoint, where we could always just at the same token, turn the tails and just fly from the first officer side of the aircraft, and everything would be realistic and as it should be, right? So just wanted to touch on base on that. I know that a lot of people have been asking if Moza was ever going to come out with a captain side airbus stick. I don't think so, and I really doubt anybody else really is either. I think there was one company that I've heard that has one. I don't remember who they are, forgive me, but I think that's the only time that I've ever heard of one actually being available for purchase anywhere. And I don't know that it matches up to the standard base that we normally see from Thrustmaster, Virpil, VKB, and Moza. Winwing actually uses a proprietary base. You can't use Thrustmaster, Virpil, etc., all those aforementioned names. You can't use their grips on a Winwing base. Okay, so anyway, hopefully that gives you guys some answers on the Airbus Captain Stick as we talk about new products. Now let's get into this stuff because this is really, really exciting stuff. Now, judging by the splash screen here, if you guys have been watching it, there's a ton of new stuff here. Pretty much everything that you're looking at there is a new product that is on its way this year. So let's jump right into it because there's a lot to talk about. Okay, so we just got done talking about the AB9, and one of the things I really like about the Moza naming scheme, guys, if you're ever curious about it, even to their steering wheels, they have the R3, the R5, the R9, the R12. Same thing with the AB9, now the AB6. The number in each one of those naming schemes tells you what the force feedback force is, okay, in Newton meters? I think it's Newton meters. Okay, so let's get talking about this. The AB6, much smaller than its bigger brother, the AB9, but a bit more functional. Here's where things get interesting here. So you have programmable front panel with RGB lighting. Not too worried about that. The dual sliders, I can see that being kind of cool. I personally, I wouldn't see wanting to use one of those as like a throttle, but in theory you could. I mean, the sliders, you can do anything you want. The realistic torque, the high performance outrunner motors. I really like my AB9 for flight simulation. I think it's a fantastic build. And so the only real difference that I think that you're going to see differently here is obviously you're going to have far more buttons, far more configuration options with the AB6, but it's not going to be as strong. The force feedback in the AB9, again, 9 versus 6, is obviously going to be a little bit less on the AB6. The full metal constructions, it's going to be same across the board, just like the AB9. So the fact that I've been using my AB9, guys, since it released, I actually got mine before it released. I can tell you that I swear by it. I love it. I use it constantly. I use it both a shifter and a flight control stick. So I can't stress enough how wonderful it is. The one thing I want to talk about is the advanced software customization. Moza has really gone out of their way with the cockpit software to try to really bring a ton of customization options into the software so that way you can tweak this thing on just about any level. Everything from turbulence to engine feedback to vibration to torque to aerodynamic force that you're going to feel against the control surface, and then really anything else that you guys can think of. I'm sure that there's something that I'm missing. I don't know. But they've really done a fantastic job with this product. I really like that they're starting to really think outside the box, outside of just a piece of flight equipment. Even the buttons on it, I can see a couple of different uses for those. Okay, and I can see a couple different scenarios in where that I would want to use them. But I really like the way they're expanding it. Again, smaller than the bigger brother. By the way, guys, I don't have a price point on any of this stuff as of the time of this recording, but keep in mind the idea behind all of this right here is to bridge the gap between the higher end and the low end simulation control systems. So you can bet your money it's going to be cheaper than that of the AB9 based on the target of what they're looking to do with it. Okay, so keep that in mind. The AB9, I think, runs right around $599, if I remember correctly, right around $600, which I still highly recommend, especially if you're someone who likes the idea of having it as a shifter as well. If you like to do both flying and driving, it is so easy to simply pull your shifter off, put a flight stick on, switch the modes, and off to races. Not that this is supposed to be an AB9 preach, but I wanted to toss that out there. That's why I use mine so heavily, is it makes it very easy to swap back and forth. So that is the AB6 force feedback flight base. For anyone who's remotely worried about, well, are they actually going to release the products, things like that? Moza so far has hit every target since they first announced their step into flight simulation. So they've given us no reason as of yet to think that they're not going to. So stay tuned for more on a release date when I know more. All right, so now where's a flight base without a flight stick? Previously, you guys, they had the MH16, as we already talked about. That's their combat style grip. And then they also have the Airbus First Officer's grip. So now we have the Moza MHG flight stick. Now you have a spacecraft fighter inspired design, and you can totally see that. They've definitely got a ton of different controls and different options on it that give you sort of that combination feel I can see what they're going for. It sort of, to me, it sort of looks like a MiG and an F-18 had a baby, and that was the result. So we're not going to necessarily talk too much about all of the, you know, Hall sensors thing that's pretty much standard in the industry now. So I think that's fair to say that. However, the overall ergonomics of it look very, very nice. The two-stage trigger, I don't know what's wrong with me today, is something that I do like to point out, because the two-stage triggers are actually a really big deal in almost most combat aircraft now. So if you're really into combat, that is actually a pretty kicker feature there. To give you guys an example of where that's still very heavily used is especially in the real world, is the A-10C Warthog, or Thunderbolt 2, whichever you prefer to call it. So when the A-10 goes on its gun run using its GAU-8 Avenger, okay, so it'll come in, it finds its target, you squeeze that trigger halfway, and you know, if you're sitting here and you're sort of doing one of these, you level out on your target, you squeeze that trigger halfway to its first detent, and the entire aircraft stabilizes, just goes, locks in, right? And then obviously when you squeeze it the rest of the way, things on the ground go bye-bye, right? So that's just one example of where they're used. There's a couple of different ways that they're used, and depending on which aircraft you're flying. For example, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, Viper, whichever one you want to call it, also has a purpose for the dual stage trigger. I think it's more for the targeting system at that point. But anyway, universal flight stick connector. I want to point that out too, because if you like the stick but maybe aren't interested in the base, this is what I was talking about before. So far that I'm aware of, you have VKB, Virpil, Thrustmaster, and Moza all use the same base threading, meaning that you can buy a base or buy a grip from any one of those developers, and they should work. If some of the buttons don't respond or don't map well, that's going to be a fault of the base or vice versa. But I will tell you that thus far, in my experience of dealing with that very thing, swapping them back and forth, going from this to this, testing that, I haven't ran into an issue where I've seen a single one that didn't work across the board. So far, they all seem to be pretty much plug and play. The two lights up on top, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I'm sort of over the lights on everything, but they did say space and fighter, themed there, so I get that. The Hall effect hat switch is actually one that I do want to point out that does make a bit of a difference. That allows you, if I'm not mistaken, that allows it to be more of a pressure sensitive, or not pressure, but distance sensitive, right? So you can, if you go far on it, you're going to get more of that that accelerated scrolling, where if you just barely touch it, you can move your cursor slowly. So that is pretty cool as well. So again, this is the Moza MHG flight stick. Now we move on to their Moza MTQ throttle quadrants. And I say quadrants, they're all the same base, but different grips. I like what they've done here, and yet there's a part of it that, so we'll talk about that. So, modular throttle system levers. One of the beautiful things that I really love about these is they look absolutely full to scale when you look at the size of it. Whether you're going for fighter grip or you have your Boeing, and we have our Airbus grip. I really, really do like that. I'm excited to try those out. Not sure how I feel about the full white handles, and it's only because I live in the desert and everything gets freaking dusty. So, it's just one of those things I'm going to have to deal with, but I really do like the idea here. And then the throttle levers for the fighter jet style. I wish I could see more of a side view of that, but it very much so has more of that, again, sort of combining like an F-15 and F-18, sort of look like they had a baby there, and that's what we came up with, which is a good thing. For me, when it comes to the throttle grips, for the fighter purposes, I'm all about buttons. The more buttons, the more hats, the better. I mean, because there's just constantly stuff that you can do. The control grip, or the control panel, that's where we're going to start talking about these buttons up here, right? I'm not sure where I'm at with that. I guess it would help if I was actually on the right screen. It'd be these buttons here. You guys are going to have to tell me what you think here. So first off, the one thing that I do like, okay, that I'm going to give them credit for right off the bat, is that the majority of the buttons are behind it. I actually don't think there's any in front of it. Okay, that's great. There's nothing worse than trying to actuate a button. If you're at full throttle, there's nothing worse than having buttons and switches right down here. I've cracked my knuckle on one of the Virpil ones before, so, it does happen. It's rare, but it happens. Was it Virpil? No. Sorry, I think it was my Thrustmaster Warthog. So that's one. I like the overall, I like all of the encoders. The encoders are actually a big deal. Again, you can use those for quite a few things right off the top of my head because they are encoder plus push button, if I'm not mistaken. So you're going to get altitude, and things like that. You can set your barometric pressure, adjust your pressure, altitude, a lot of different functions there. You could even probably use these as your autopilot master modes. Although I will tell you that's where the Moza yoke for the force feedback base comes in really handy. It's got those autopilot modes right on the front. So again, one of the things that I also really like that I want to comment about Moza that I don't know that I've mentioned ever is that they also can interconnect. Okay, you can daisy chain them. So you can have, for example, I do this with my AB9 base. I will have the MTP throttle actually plugs into the base of the AB9, and then the AB9 is the only thing that actually goes into my USB hub. So it makes it really, really nice when you have one little unit that just sort of chains it all through. Makes it a lot easier, especially if you're limited on USB space as well. So really like the design. I like the fact that the control handles are nice and large. That's actually a really big plus for me. And then the other thing is you can also see your speed brake and flap handles as well. Again, a big plus. So they at least brought the critical items straight out of the box right into where you need it to be. Now, I don't know if each one of these kits are going to be something that's going to be purchased later on. I would imagine that they're going to be more of an expansion-based thing where you can sort of pick which one you want to buy and then you can buy the extra grips later. But I don't have any information on that as of yet as to what the final word on that's going to be. Okay, probably the thing that I'm actually, believe it or not, most excited about is the rudder pedals. These rudder pedals actually look really slick. Now, I'm going to say right out of the gate, because you guys know me, they actually remind me of the Virpil Ace rudder pedals. Now, I don't think they copied Virpil. I want to make that very freaking clear. I don't think they copied Virpil at all. The reason why I'm pointing out is you can just sort of see the overall design looks very, very similar. But if it works, and that's what we want. I like you have the adjustable pedal angle. That's a big one. That's going to be determined on, give you a lot of options on where they're mounted, how they're mounted, what the extension on your leg is going to be, and versus if you want them up close, or far back, that's where you're going to want to be able to adjust that angle is based on how you want your legs to be positioned when you're in your seating position, right? So that's a big one. Okay, and believe it or not, there are actually quite a few rudder pedals out there that you have very limited, if any, angle adjustment. So that is a very nice thing. All metal construction, obviously that's sort of a no-brainer, right? At that point. I do like the overall axis design. I like this feeling versus for example, like the TPRs from Thrustmaster. And don't get me wrong, I used mine for 3 years. Loved my TPRs. They're great rudder pedals. Please do not misunderstand this. That pendulum design was still really nice, but being on that Z-axis down here was definitely a lot nicer. I find that to be a much more natural feel than what the TPRs did. But again, fantastic rudder pedals. That is not meant to be a shot at Thrustmaster. I bought mine. I loved them. They were great. Okay, so anyway, just not trying to put anyone down for the sake of somebody else, right? I do like the overall aesthetics of them too. They look slick. They look really slick. And the reason what's bringing that is the stealth-inspired design. You can see where they were going with that. I can see it. Customizable centering force. I like that. Now, one of the things is my understanding is the tension springs is all they're talking about there. The centering springs there in the middle of the rudder pedals. My understanding is that it is still in debate whether or not the springs or tension adjustments are going to be included with it or a separate purchase. Moza, I'm sure you'll hear this and watch this video, include it with the purchase. If you value at least this guy's opinion at all, include it in the box. Put all of your extra springs, detents, and this goes the same for throttles and everything else. Put it in the box, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because, for example, Virpil, again, in my opinion, is going to be your biggest competitor here, in my opinion, because Virpil's fantastic. You guys know how I feel about Virpil. They come with it. You get everything you need. Tension springs, detents, it's all included in the box. And you don't want to wait for another piece. Like, if it has the ability to be customized, especially something as simple as a spring, include them in the box. Just include it with the purchase. If you have to charge $20 more, then charge $20 more. But have all of the customization options right there on the fly. That way people can do their adjustments. So that's just my 2 cents. If I'm able to throw my advice to Moza about that, there we go. The non-slip rubber pads. I actually do like that. If you were on a wooden floor, carpet, they work okay. After, if you're someone like me who unfortunately, like my animals aren't even allowed in my office, and it still finds its way in here. If they build up a lot of fur on them, I will tell you guys they start to slip. But on like a hardwood floor or something like that, they work solid. They stick. The one thing that I do hope that I can't really tell from this image is I do hope the rubber pads can be removed for a more permanent mounting option into like a cockpit or a rig, which I would imagine that's something that's been considered. I really do. And finally, WinWing, watch out. Ooh. So, this is one hell of a talking point here. The Moza FMP, or front panel system for the F-18 Hornet. So, I'm just going to, you guys can see what it is. You guys can see how easily it works. Okay, it even says Moza cockpit software integration. Now, the biggest one that these are going to be talking to you guys right out of the gate is DCS World flyers. But universal VESA mount compatibility, I have mine, and I don't think that WinWings has theirs. I'm gonna be comparing them, guys. The WinWing is the only other person who does this, so there is going to be a lot of comparison with this one. I'm going to tell you right now, obviously I can't see behind it. I can't see how it's all assembled. But this looks very slick, looks very sleek, looks very clean, and so does WinWings. This is going to be a battle. I hope that Moza sends me a copy that I can review and compare and give you guys my honest opinion on who's going to come out on top here. This is going to be tough. So, full-scale cockpit grade replication, authentic 7.1-inch square displays, swappable magnetic bezels with pogo pin interface. So that makes me think that, so the bezels can be removed, just a simple magnet. I'm not quite sure why you would want to remove them. Swap them with what? I need to know more about that. Angle adjustment clamp. So this is where this is going to start to get touchy. If there is one mounting system, if there is just one clamp in the back of it that holds the whole unit up, they already have an edge on WinWing. Flat and simple, hands down, that's an edge. That's a step in the lead. And then the top panel where it says Moza up there, I get it. Like, how do you tell someone to not put your branding on it? If, in my personal opinion, I would put the branding on top, put it in the back. I don't know that I would have it on front. Your diehard fighter enthusiasts aren't going to like that it says Moza on it. Believe it or not, things like that can be an immersion killer. But that's just being nitpicky. That's my job. That's how we keep it honest, right? Everything else looks dead on the money. I am super interested in this one. And I'm super interested in what the price is going to look like. That's going to be the kicker. That's going to be the kicker. And if there's one thing that I'll give Moza, they've been hell-bent. Ever since they entered in the flight sim community, they have been hell-bent on underpricing just about everybody who's doing similar things to what they're doing. So, and that's saying something. So the WinWing Top Gun MIP, or main instrument panel, which is what this would be the comparison to, I believe is over $1,000. So it'd be interested to see what this is going to come out to and what kind of storms and wind that's going to shake up around the flight sim community. That's a big one. I think this one's going to take a lot of heat in a good way. I think it's going to get a lot of attention in the flight sim community, especially the combat community, because you're not even limited to the Hornet. Like, you can use this with just about any aircraft. F-16 would be a little tough, but, I mean, all the main controls, you can move things around and make it work. Like, I guarantee it. So anyways, that is Moza's lineup as of right now for 2025. I believe that the best information that I have, current goal, emphasizing goals are always subject to change, is late quarter 4 or Q4. So we'll see. Cross your fingers. Moza keep kicking ass, because I think this is absolutely them kicking ass. I think they're going to turn heads. I think they're going to take some names, and damn. And especially with their flight sim lineup that's already out. Like, they're really... People better watch out. I said it last year. I said it last year when the AB9 started, when they first started releasing in the flight sim community. I said it last year that the flight sim community better watch out and that Moza was coming. And whether or not they've hit all the targets here, is obviously debatable, and that's subjective. But what all of their products tonight show is that they're thinking. they're innovating. They are wanting to make their name known in the flight sim community, and I think they're going to succeed this year, even more so than they did last year. I think some damage is coming. The one thing that I will give Moza, I have no problem. I'm going to give you guys a recommendation here, Moza. Come up with a flight stick base that isn't force feedback. That's all I'm going to say. Step into that same realm, and people are going to be in trouble. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about all these Moza products. Let me know which one excites you the most. And as always, folks, stay safe and healthy. I'll see you in the next one.